How many times have I told y'all that Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, and this MAGA Republican administration is absolutely racist? That they are anti-black. Now, we know they anti-LGBTQ. We know that. But they anti-black, okay? And here you have a federal judge in Massachusetts appointed by Republican conservative Ronald Reagan. Now, Reagan didn't like black people. We all know that too. This federal judge, in ruling in a lawsuit regarding the canceling of grants in the National Institutes of Health, literally said that this is the most blatant discrimination that he has seen in 40 years on the bench. Folks, this is crazy. This here is a New York Times article. And the ruling from the bench, Judge William G. Young of the Federal District Court for the District of Massachusetts, blasted the Trump administration, ordering them to restore much of the funding pending an appeal. Look at this quote, y'all. This represents racial discrimination and discrimination against America's LGBTQ community. That's what this is. He said, look at this here. Judge Young, a Reagan appointee with 40 years of experience as a federal judge, said the government's rationale for canceling some of the grants, which also supported research into topics such as gender identity and equity in all healthcare, appeared to be rooted in prejudice. He cited the administration's very public efforts to eliminate any trace of diversity and equity initiatives from the federal government, as well as its attacks on transgender people. Now, when you go through reading this article, he said that over the course of his career, he had, quote, never seen government racial discrimination like this, and felt duty-bound to state his conclusion about the government's intent. Quote, I would be blind not to call it out. Folks, this is crazy. It's unbelievable. Now, see, this is not, oh, that's y'all just saying this stuff. No. Now, when they had the trial, he was grilling Trump's lawyers, okay? Hitting them up, blasting them about their decision making. Now, Andrew Nixon, a spokesman for the Department of Health and Human Services, said the agency stands by its decision to end funding for research that prioritizes ideological agendas. That's what he calls it. Ideological agendas. Look at this. Leading up to the ruling on Monday, Judge Young repeatedly pressed for details about the government's decision-making in terminating the grants, expressing deep skepticism that it had followed normal, dispassionate processes. On several occasions, he expressed dismay that much of the publicly available information about the cancellations had to be gleaned from GrantWatch, an independent database put together by a small team of academics who worked to piece together the extent of the Trump administration's cuts through their crowdsourcing. The way that, y'all, this is crazy. This is literally what the judge said. Can you imagine? Can you imagine this whole deal? I mean, in looking at this story, I mean, ProPublica also had their breakdown right here. It says, in Monday's ruling, the judge determined that the directives that led to the grant terminations were, quote, arbitrary and capricious, and said they had, quote, no force and effect. Now, his ruling only covers the grants that the plaintiffs identified. But it was absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy what he said. Come back. ProPublica story. He also noted the administration's targeting of LGBTQ plus research. Quote, it is palpably clear these directives and the set of terminated grants here also are designed to frustrate, to stop research that may bear on the health. We are talking about health here, the health of Americans, of our LGBTQ community. That's appalling. Folks, this is a Reagan-appointed federal judge. Kush Desai, White House spokesman, this is how they responded. Quote, "It was appalling that a federal judge would use court proceedings to express his political views and preferences," adding that, quote, "justice ceases to be administered when a judge clearly rules on the basis of his political ideologies." Desai also defended the administration's policies targeting diversity, equity, inclusion, calling it, quote, "a flawed and racist logic." He also said that the administration was committed to, quote, "restoring the gold standard of science," which he claimed involved a recognition of the biological reality of the male and female sexes. The NIH, he said, is shifting, quote, "research spending to address our chronic disease crisis instead, not to validate ideological activism." Joe, you're the attorney. Can you recall a federal judge, a conservative judge appointed by a Republican, excoriating the government in such stark racial language?
No, is the short answer. You know, even some of Bush 1 and Bush 2's appointees were more moderate. They were conservative. But this guy he's a conservative. He's a conservative's conservative, it seems like. And to the extent that the government wants to allege that he's stating his political ideology, well, maybe so if his political ideology is actually pro-Constitution. You know, there are some conservatives out here who believe in the Constitution, and arbitrary and capricious is a big problem. Clearly, this is, you know, Project 2025 and its ilk and its spirit. So you just go and you just slash everything having to do with DEI, having to do with LGBTQ plus, you know, then incidentally, of course, next door to that, having to do with trans issues, et cetera. And you just get rid of all of it just because. And you just can't do it that way, particularly at this level. And so it ought to say something that a judge with this political leaning, how he's been, who appointed him and how long he's been on the bench. It's not his first rodeo. He's been doing this longer than a lot of these guys in the administration or puppies have been alive. So when he says something, it ought to resonate in that if someone has any shred of believing in the Constitution, they should know that they got it wrong here in terms of how they did what they did. However, it's just like anything else. You don't even have to be in the law. You don't even have to be dealing with legal issues and constitutional issues to understand what they're doing politically. They often accuse someone, whether it's a judge, whether it's another politician, or whether it's certain people, whether it's Democrats, whether it's independents, whoever it is, of doing exactly what they're doing. So what they're doing is blaming the judge for being political when in fact the judge is being constitutional and they're the ones that are being political, which is why the things that they're trying to cut are the things that they're trying to cut. And so I'm glad that he pointed that out. He pointed out also that this only applies to the things that have been named. Maybe that means hint, hint, hint. You should bring a couple more of these other people, other agencies, as to other things that have been cut as arbitrarily and as capriciously. But yeah, in answer to your question, no, I haven't seen it like this. And in another world, hopefully with someone, it resonates to show, to demonstrate that the administration has a problem with the way they're doing what it is that they're doing, and that this can be a template to allow us and to remind us to keep going as it pertains to the courts, because a lot of this is so blatantly racist, so blatantly fill in the blank, et cetera, that we may be able to come in under a standard like this, bring funding back in, make some things happen in the meantime, hopefully win this election coming up, so that some of these things could potentially change permanently, and or some of this ridiculous legislation doesn't get passed.
Mustafa, here's what's quite interesting here, and I'm just pulling up. Give me 1 second. I want to pull this up here. This is from the Federal Judiciary Center. This judge, 85 years old, nominated by Ronald Reagan on March 8th, 1985, confirmed by the Senate on April 3rd, 1985. First of all, that's real quick. 1 month. He assumed senior status on July 1st, 2021. Undergrad, Harvard University. Law school, Harvard Law. U.S. Army captain. Law clerk for Supreme Court of Massachusetts. Private practice, Special Assistant Attorney General for Massachusetts. Chief Counsel for the Governor of Massachusetts. Associate Justice, the Massachusetts Superior Court, and he's lectured at Boston College Law School, Boston University Law School, and Harvard Law School. We talked a lot on this show about how judges were so important. And a lot of people, I don't care, I don't want to hear about no Biden-Harris judges. I hope all these Simple Simon yahoos now understand, with all of these judges ruling against Trump, according to the law, I hope they now understand why federal judges matter. A lot of these judges ruling against Trump are appointed by Republican presidents, even some of Trump's own appointees. Not that fool Judge Cannon in Florida, ruling against him on the rule of law. And what these judges are saying is, I don't give a damn if you're MAGA. I don't give a damn if you believe in a theocracy. In this country, you are to abide not by your Bible, not by Project 2025, not by the Heritage Foundation, not by the Federalist Society, but by the United States Constitution.
And that's exactly what it should be. And you can always tell who's real, right? Judges that are actually living up to the letter of the law, but also bringing into their analysis, what are the public health impacts, right? So when you see these other judges who you know are not doing the right thing, they often don't want to talk about the public health impacts, right? They don't want to talk about the public health impacts to the LGBTQIA community. They definitely don't want to talk about the health impacts that are going on in relationship to Black communities. And I'm sure that this judge took that into consideration. He understood, based upon the folks that he talked to, that we die at twice the rate from cardiovascular disease. So if you're a real judge, you're going to make sure that you're pulling that information in, or that we have the highest death rates from cancer, whether it is prostate, colorectal, or breast cancer. Black folks are dying from that higher than anyone else inside of our country. So as you're interpreting the law, you're looking at these grants that are out there, then you got to take that into consideration and asking, are you intentionally trying to kill these people by taking away the research, by taking away the training, by taking away the dollars that are necessary, whether it is in colleges and universities or in community organizations or whoever it might be? He probably took into consideration also that the infant mortality rate is 2 times for our communities, twice as likely our babies are to die, or mom's mortality is 3 to 4 times higher. Or for both the LGBT community and the Black community as a whole, 42% of the new cases that are out there are caught up into that. Or diabetes, we're 60% more likely to have that, and then leads to other types of diseases. So a good judge is taking all this information and then asking the question to the folks who are trying to take these things away, how does this help? How does this actually help to move the needle in a positive way? And how does it line up with the law?
Randy, I am reading the political story here. The judge says, come on, my iPad, Anthony. I'm hesitant to draw this conclusion, but I have an unflinching obligation to draw it, that this represents racial discrimination and discrimination against America's LGBT community. That's what this is. I would be blind not to call it out. My duty is to call it out. Go down further in the story. This is crazy. He says, you are bearing down on people of color because of their color. The Constitution will not permit that. Have we fallen so low? Have we no shame? Then, Young said the administration made virtually no effort to push back on claims that the cuts were discriminatory. We're talking about health here, the health of Americans, of our LGBT community. That's appalling. Now check this out. The Department of Justice, this is a political story, which defended NIH, argued the determinations align with congressional mandates to improve research. Quote, research programs based on gender identity are often unscientific, have little identifiable return on investment, and do nothing to enhance the health of many Americans. Many such studies ignore rather than seriously examine biological realities. It is an improvement to eliminate these, DOJ lawyer Thomas Ports Jr. said during the hearing. Young pressed the DOJ for an explanation. Where's the support for that? I'm asking you to just explain to me, often used to support unlawful discrimination. I see no evidence of that. A federal judge, a conservative judge appointed by a hardcore Republican, Ronald Reagan, issues this type of ruling. And you know who's real quiet, Randy? All them Negroes who were skinning and grinning at the White House. I don't hear nothing from Pastor Darrell Scott. Oh, he was tweeting yesterday about how they should bomb MSNBC and CNN. And I tweeted his ass blasting him. Oh, then they was sitting here. I ain't heard nothing from Michaela Montgomery, the little loudmouth out of Atlanta who was with Trump at Chick-fil-A. What Angela Stanton King, she ain't said nothing. She was on Willie D's podcast. She ain't talked about this here. Where you at, Joseph Pinion? Where you at, King Randall? Where you at? That little elf, Terrence Williams? Where y'all at? Where you at, Davis Harris Jr.? It's amazing how these happy-go-lucky Negroes. Where you at, Paris Denard? Where you at? Oh, where you at? That little child with the Florida A&M, Sharice Lane. Where you at? It's amazing. See, they get mad. I call them to help. Because that's all y'all are. And yeah, where your ass at, Tiger Woods? You rolled up in the Black History Month reception, draped in your Congressional Medal of Honor. I'm sorry, your Presidential Medal of Freedom. But y'all don't say nothing about the racism coming from these folks. Oh, I know what it is. Where you at, Alveda King? Where you at, Byron Donalds? Where you at, Tim Scott? Where you at, Burgess Owens? Where you at what's the little one from Texas? Wesley Hunt. Where you at? Where y'all at? It's amazing how silent they are. They don't say nothing about all of the racial discriminatory stuff that goes down. Where you at, Bruce Lavelle? Where you at? That's why I call y'all to help. They only call y'all to help them look diverse. Y'all are the help, pure and simple. Randy, go ahead.
They're the absolute help, and they have no room in this conversation because it's so refreshing to see integrity because we haven't seen that lately. And I appreciate that the judge said, my duty is to call it out. Your duty is not like the people you just listed to kiss butt, to shuck and jive, to gain favor. That's not the duty. The duty is to serve the Constitution of the United States of America. And that's what that judge did. And he recognizes that what they are doing, what they are trying to do, attempting to do, these executive orders, is honestly orders to kill us. Honestly, orders to kill us, because it wasn't until recently that Black people willingly were able to participate in studies that they did at the NIH. We weren't even considered when they came out with statistics or came out with health recommendations. It wasn't about us. They didn't care about us. They weren't looking at diseases like sickle cell anemia that affects us to a higher rate. just like Brother Mustafa just said, they weren't talking about the health disparities when we have children. It wasn't anything that was considered. And so that's what they want to go back to, that the only people's health that are considered and studied and paid attention to, again, are white, male, and heterosexual. And those are the people they care about. So, but it is so refreshing to see someone who is basing his decisions and has some integrity in basing his decisions on how the Constitution bids him to, and not on trying to please a wannabe dictator.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. The window to invest in Fanbase is closing. We've raised over $10.6 million of our $17 million goal. That means there's room for less than 6,370 people to invest in Fanbase for the average amount. The minimum to invest in Fanbase right now is $399. That makes you an owner in Fanbase today. Go to startengine.com/fanbase to invest. Why? Because current social apps have taken advantage of users for far too long, with content suppression, shadow banning, harmful racist content, and no real tools for monetization and equity. Fanbase has over 1.4 million users and counting, allowing anyone to reach all their following and monetize their content from day one. Social media is the new TV, and whoever owns the apps that distribute that content have the opportunity to own potential billion-dollar companies. While big platforms with uncertain futures are failing to serve their users, Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now, invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the next generation of social media.